Please be advised that this video will contain spoilers for all the Final Fantasy XIV expansions, including main story quests, job quests, and raid content. Whichever path you choose for your Final Fantasy XIV character, whether you begin in the balmy heat of the Jewel of Thanalan, beneath the leafy boughs of the Black Shroud, or you make port below the bright blue skies of Lenosha, you are joined on your journey by two of the most important characters of this story. They remain quiet and unassuming, and it may be that you miss their presence entirely. Perhaps you noted their near identical appearance. They follow in the footsteps of their famous forebear, seeking to carry on his legacy and uncover the truth of his fate. They are Alphinaud and Alisaie Leveilleur, son and daughter of Fourcheneau, and the beloved grandchildren of Louisoix Leveilleur. I am deeply fond of these terrific twins and the bond they share, and in this video I hope to show why their character arcs are among the strongest and best realised in the story of Final Fantasy XIV as a whole. But before we can examine their tale, we must go back to 1.0 and explain the importance of Louisoix Leveilleur. Louisoix was something of a revolutionary in his native Charlayan. He was the founder of the Circle of Knowing, the precursor to the Signs of the Seventh Dawn. He did this because he wished to intervene in Eorzean affairs, spurred by a prophecy, in direct opposition to Charlayan's policy of non-intervention. Before he departed for Eorzea, he found his grandchildren and gave both of them a gift. More on these gifts later. While in Eorzea, he assisted the player character in dealing with the primals, by helping the player gain entry to their lairs. When the 7th Umbral Calamity drew close, he sought to summon the 12 to defend the realm, and prevent the disaster from occurring. The ritual ultimately failed. He used his power to send the player character 5 years into the future, knowing that their role was more important than his life. At the last, Louisoix did in fact receive the blessing of the 12, and empowered by the prayers of those in Eorzea who sought salvation, he was transformed into the Primal of Rebirth. While the Elder Primal Bahamut was still able to wreak a great deal of destruction upon Eorzea, and forever change the etheric balance in Kurthus, gripping it in eternal winter, Louisoix's heroic intervention saved Eorzea, not only in his defeat of Bahamut, but also in allowing his own ether to flow back into the land, to assist in its rebirth. However, as we learn in the Coils of Bahamut, which I will discuss in more depth in a moment, the Elder Primal was not entirely destroyed, and Louisoix became his thrall.
And thus began your existence as the Elder Primal's thrall.
I cannot help but wonder at his will to survive. Though he was all but obliterated, Bahamut found a way to seize the power you surrendered. That would explain why part of his physical form survived to be entombed underground.
It would also explain why Eorzea was so terribly warped. Even as the land sought to restore itself, the returning flow of ether was cut off.
Before we follow the twins to the binding coils of Bahamut, we must first look at the early part of their tale in Eorzea. Even if you missed their appearance at the beginning of the game, You'll encounter them several times as you visit the various remembrance services and Grand Company speeches held by each of the realm's city-states. Alphinaud does the majority of the talking here, helping the Warrior of Light to interpret each realm's crest and values so that they can decide which Grand Company most aligns with their own views. The twins lament the lack of remembrance within each service, as the leaders of the city-states can no longer recall the Warriors of Light with any clarity or specificity, so instead they focus on their own company and politics. It is this opportunistic grandstanding which causes Alisaie and Alphinaud to part, as Alisaie believes she cannot help to save a realm that is so fragmented and petty. She is moved to search more fervently for her grandfather, and hence she becomes embroiled in the search for Bahamut in the binding coils. Why is that? It was to follow in Louisoix's wake that the twins came to Eorzea. It seems that Alisaie did not understand why her beloved grandfather gave his life for a realm not his own, and in turn why the legacy he left should be upheld. Her search initially leaves her with more questions than answers. It is only when her brother joins her that they learn the truth of their grandfather's fate, that the Ellison man Louisoix has now become the primal phoenix, and that Eorzea, the realm reborn, rose up from his ashes. It is at this time the twins see the joint power of the grimoires they carry, which are two halves of the same whole. They are called Adelphoi, from the Greek Adelphos, meaning brother, and they are more powerful when read together. Louisoix encourages his grandchildren to find their own reason to help Eorzea. Perhaps now, given space to fully reflect upon and properly grieve for their grandfather, in full awareness of how much he gave and suffered, they may both grow and flourish. It is here that Alisaie first expresses her wish to be as a sword in the darkness. It seems the writers did not forget this, as we shall see later. By going through this journey together, Alphinaud and Alisaie gain a greater understanding of each other. Alphinaud sees his sister's resolve, while Alisaie, now purposeful, swears to not be outdone by her brother. Perhaps this purpose has brought her new confidence. We will look more at the Lady Leveilleur later.
Who are you?
Alphinaud Leveilleur, at your service. As a scion of the Seventh Dawn, I stand against our primal and imperial foes, as my grandfather once did.
Up until the patch content of Heavenswood, Alphinaud was the twin best known by the Warrior of Light. Even those players who took part in the coils know that the screen time devoted to Alisaie pales in comparison to her brother. This seems very much in keeping with the course the twins have charted through their young lives, even before they came to Eorzea. Though they were both admitted to the Charlene Studium at the tender age of 11, Alphinaud is regarded as the cleverer of the two. Where his sister has no interest in or time for diplomacy, Alphinaud is a skilled public speaker and negotiator even in a realm reborn. He is clearly exceptional and is given command of military operations at the age of 16. The boy is also unquestionably arrogant. Sam Riegel's delivery does sound a little strange to me now, after becoming so accustomed to Colin Ryan's voice, but he really does capture his precociousness so well. Alphinaud's motivations are good, but his self-importance is grating and often a point of complaint for new players still working through the story. Good, I say. This is exactly the sort of young man Alphinaud is at this point of the story, and while he does little to help himself, and a great deal of damage, as we'll discuss in a moment, I can't help but wonder just how much of it is his fault. As the grandson of the famous Louisoix, how much praise did he hear from those who visited his diplomat parents concerning his family's blood and line? How many eager tutors compared the bright 11-year-old, studying among those many years his senior, to his grandfather? I cannot help but imagine the burden on his small shoulders as all those words reached him. And so, hard-working, clever Alphinaud did all he could to be worthy of his grandfather's legacy. But again, at the time of A Realm Reborn, Alphinaud was 16 years old. His grandfather was 72 when he saved the realm. Louisoix had sired at least one child. He had known life, seen the world, and lived in it far longer when he completed his life's work. And as a grieving 11-year-old, Alphinaud threw himself into his studies at the Studium to work for the salvation of the realm. Beneath those puffed-up speeches and clever words, might we find a young man holding fast to the high expectations and heavy burdens upon him? If he cannot believe himself worthy and capable of his grandfather's legacy, if he can't show that outwardly, how can he expect all those older than him to take him seriously? On a meta level, part of me wonders if Alphinaud represents some commentary on the change from 1.0 to A Realm Reborn. The development team was grieving the fate of 1.0, its poor reception, and the feat required to see it remade. All this under new producer Naoki Yoshida, who had never worked on a Final Fantasy game prior to 14. They had to have faith that he would make the right choices. Perhaps Yoshida himself felt like he was like Alphinaud, walking in the shadow of those who came before, and that he would be judged against the measure of the veterans who failed. It is also entirely possible and probable that I am overthinking this, so feel free to disregard this thought in its entirety. All this to say, of course Alphinaud was going to become the sort of person he was at the start of the game. It would be strange if such an extraordinary person did not have quirks and foibles. His flaws make his character much more believable. However, what truly makes him a great character is how he acknowledges these flaws. In a turn that would not be out of place in a Greek tragedy, Alphinaud's hubris condemns not only him, but those dear to him. Believing that the Scions cannot serve his purposes alone, he creates his own organisation, much like his grandfather before him, the ill-fated Crystal Braves. I will let him acknowledge that mistake in his own words.
"'Tis all my doing. I believed myself the only one who truly understood Eorzea's woes, and look what that arrogance has wrought. I gave commands, influenced governments with my certainty. I treated the Crystal Braves and even the Scions themselves as pawns in my great scheme to save the realm. But in my headlong rush into imagined glory, I paid no heed to the ground upon which I trod. The salvation of Eorzea. What was it that I hoped to achieve? Did I believe that I could rid the realm of every danger and difficulty? That I could defeat the Empire and the Ascians, and find homes for every refugee? Oh yes, I was so very clever. Become a guardian of Eorzea, I implored, and sat back to watch my perfect army cleanse the land of chaos. 'Twas all but a means to feed my own vanity. Only when all is lost do I finally realize the truth.
I am sure everyone can relate to Alphinaud's feelings in this scene. While it's unlikely that any of us have become embroiled in assassination plots and unrest, we have all made choices that we regret and have felt foolish and small. Alphinaud could have chosen to find an out. He could have returned home, though the shame and mockery he may have faced upon returning could have been enough to convince him otherwise. He could have given up, but he doesn't. Alphinaud carries on, but not wholly in his own strength. No grand speech convinces him. No, he finds hope in 3 things. First, he sees the strength and fortitude of the Warrior of Light. For much of the main story, you work directly alongside Alphinaud and experience many crucial story beats together. But this is no great step, you might argue, Of course he'll listen to you. You're the hero of the story, strong and famous as his grandfather. Were it just the Warrior of Light, I would agree, but there's more. Second, he listens to an unlikely survivor and escapee of the Scion's destruction, to Taru, the lowly receptionist. She doesn't have the echo. She has no combat skill to speak of, but what Tataru has is hope and the ability to share it with him. And finally, thanks to the help we have given him and the friendship both Alphinaud and the Warrior of Light have formed with Orsch von Greystone, and his kind words and welcome mugs of hot chocolate, Alphinaud sees a path forward. The young advisor permits himself to take advice. He realises that, for as much as he could accomplish alone, how much more could he do when the burden is shared? It is at this point that Heavensward begins, and we say goodbye to Sam Riegel, and with it, the more arrogant and self-important Alphinaud that he captured so well. We see the rest of his development through Colin Ryan. In turn, Simone B., who voiced Alisaie, is replaced by Bethan Walker. Even more so than A Realm Reborn, the Warrior of Light and Alphinaud go through a great deal together. We make new friends, lose old friends, and together learn the truth of the false history that underpins all of Ishgard's problems. The truth of man's betrayal and the ensuing war between man and dragon that's claimed so many lives. This echoes the betrayal of the dragons wrought by the Allagans, which Louisoix condemned during the coils of Bahamut. And throughout, Alphinaud continues to listen, to question. He tempers his cleverness with humility. Alphinaud is growing up. But then, as he marches on toward Stormblood, tragedy strikes. Alisaie is introduced back into the main story, laid upon the fainting couch in front of the House Fortomp fireplace, with her brother watching over her. Though they have come at it from different directions, they have been brought together once more by the same event, the introduction of the Warriors of Darkness. With Alisaie's return, not only do we see the twins sharing the screen once more, but we see Alisaie take a more prominent role within the story. Throughout the Warriors of Darkness arc of the post-Dragonsong War questline, we begin to understand Alisaie more deeply. Both halves of Adelphoi make their second appearance. While Alphinaud uses Arcanima and scholarly magic, Alisaie uses the book to summon a blade. This fits their personalities well. Alphinaud is the thinker and tactician, and thus suits the scholar archetype well. His additional abilities, namely his unique carbuncles, point to his cleverness and gifted nature, though their colours seem to be a nod to one of his flaws. His perception of the world is rather black and white. In contrast, while Alisaie also uses magic like her brother, her use of the blade and later transformation into a red mage suits her character to a fault, and was foreshadowed by the Coils raid series. This leads to a rather amusing comparison once more with her brother. For what is red magic? It is black and white. It is for Alphinaud to plan and strategize, and for Alisaie to take action and leap into the fray. It is this leaping which brings her into trouble with the Warriors of Darkness, as they pursue and gravely injure her. But Alphinaud never questions her actions. He never tells her that she should act differently or be more like him. He accepts their differences and focuses on his love for her instead.
I can swim well enough. How about you, Alisaie?
Oh, like a fish, in contrast to my doggy-paddling brother. Somehow, the boy just isn't very buoyant.
Skilled or no, your bodies are ill-suited to the sea. Your cause demands alacrity, and you shall have it.
Alisaie's arc is often categorised as one of comparison with others, usually her brother. Throughout Stormblood and Shadowbringers, she also compares herself with the Warrior of Light and Darkness. One imagines that her instinct to do so was born out of her being constantly compared to her brother. She is exceptionally clever herself, being admitted to the studium at the same time as Alphinaud. Unlike her brother, she was not making grand sweeping speeches and getting politically involved. We learn in patch 5.4 that she wrote her thesis on the practical applications of magic in battle, while Alphinaud wrote a treatise on saving the world. I imagine that she was quietly focused on her studies. Perhaps she feared being proud of her achievements would amount to naught, living in Alphinaud's shadow. Or perhaps she was frustrated that her brother appeared to let her grandfather leave her Eorzea without complaint or debate, where in matters of diplomacy he was very outspoken. In this case, perhaps she thought his priorities were askew. While I don't think it would be particularly helpful or accurate to give too much consideration to her position as a young lady, as she works to do her part for a legacy characterised by a very famous man, that being her grandfather, it seems relevant insofar as Alphinaud appears to be the more obvious successor to their grandfather's legacy, as they share many qualities. That is not to say that she shares none with him, far from it. As time has passed, she has allowed herself to feel more deeply for the people and realm that Louisoix died to save. Her compassion is obvious, and is best demonstrated in her care for Garbu, the young kobold who lost his parents to a ritual summoning, and called Titan forth in his grief and despair in one of the most emotional moments to date. Contrast this with the Realm Reborn's Alphinaud, who was quick to take the side of the Alliance leaders against the beast tribes and their summonings. He cared for the realm more quickly, but found himself needing to adjust and atone for his narrow worldview over time. Alisaie's compassion for kin and beastkin alike cements her place as the inheritor of Louisoix's strength of heart. Without such compassion, would Louisoix have had the strength of will to sacrifice himself for all of Eorzea? I think not. This compassion shines throughout Stormblood, and highlights one of the key themes of the expansion. In Revolutions, the lyrical theme of Stormblood, Susan Calloway sings, "Let not the rays of justice blind, ever trust in grace, and she shall guide." Alisaie, alongside the rest of the cast, is forced to confront the horrors of war against the Empire, while holding fast to their values and humanity, lest they become like those they fight against. Of course, throughout the expansion, we see the circumstances that drove two women to serve the Empire, Yotsuyu and Fordola, and how their lives were altered by their circumstances. Fordola loses her family to violence, and turns to violence to protect herself and all she has earned. This also makes her valuable to the Empire and keeps her safe. Yotsuyu leans into her more feminine wiles, and uses her dark beauty to maintain control over Doma and those who work to serve her. They are almost a mirror to Alphinaud and Alisaie, with Alphinaud finding his darker counterpart in Yotsuyu. They are both clearly clever, and not without leadership skills or charisma. Alphinaud uses his to make strides towards goodness, while Yotsuyu uses hers to maintain control and tyranny. Fordola's anger and violence is not unlike Alisaie's need to act and react, but does not operate under the same moral constraints. We are left wondering what sort of people they might have been had their lives been gentler and kinder, and we see that when Yotsuyu suffers amnesia, and when Fordola joins Arenvold to hunt primals. How much easier has it been for the twins to be good people, because they had Louisoix as their example? The twins' experiences here allow them to become more well-rounded and understanding people. It also allows greater development and interaction between them. They speak fondly of each other, protect each other, but also bicker, poke fun, and make jokes, which is entirely accurate of siblings, not only twins.
The Garleans bear no love for the Confederacy, but with Doma lost to them, why would they attack? Unless
Yotsuyu is on that island.
Even if she isn't, our allies are under attack and they need our help.
We will help them while you remain with Soroban. Arguing will only delay us. Is that clear?
Fine, but you haven't heard the last of this.
Soroban, we may need to make a swift exit. See that the boat is ready to sail at a moment's notice.
It shall be done.
What, and you're going to swim there, are you?
'Tis the quickest way, and you may rest assured I've been practicing.
Yeah!
Come.
This is also evident in Shadowbringers, which gives us even more wonderful interactions between them, in addition to their own individual character development.
You're late! Late! I've been waiting for you to summon me ever since you came here. Waiting and waiting and waiting. But my sapling didn't so much as utter my name. Such a heartless thing she is. Cold and cruel and heartless!
Another self-important little brat. Just what we need.
Reminds me of my childhood. All right, I'm sorry. It was a joke. Honestly, just a joke.
It is also in Shadowbringers that they feel most like our companions, in my opinion. A Realm Reborn and Heavensward gave us lots of Alphinaud. Stormblood gave us lots of Alisaie, but a bit less Alphinaud. Shadowbringers gives us an excellent balance of both, virtually from the beginning, as they open our quests in Norvrent. Alphinaud is faced with his greatest challenge yet, as he comes into conflict with Vorthri and the sick, twisted opulence of Yulmore, a city dressing and preparing its well-to-do denizens to engorge themselves on incredible excess, and each other, before embracing death. He makes his stand early in one of his best exchanges to date. He really has become the leader and figurehead that he claimed to be back in A Realm Reborn, most exemplifying the leadership and wisdom of his grandfather at this moment.
You were granted a place in my city for a particular skill. What was it?
Painting.
Oh, an artiste! Then you shall paint a picture for me of Yulmore. If I find your art pleasing, then I may excuse this display of insolence. Who gave you permission to tend to that criminal's wounds? I told you to paint me a picture!
What you need is a mirror, not a painting. It will capture the horror I see before me far better than I ever could. Can you walk?
I think so. Did that little worm just insult me?
Alisaie's own fight is not without its similarities. While she and others roam Amareng to hunt and kill the Sin Eaters threatening the people, a slow, painful death at their hands is also inevitable for some. She and Tesleen also prepare their people for death, caring for them at the inn at Journey's Head. They are not unlike carers and nurses, tending to the elderly in care homes, watching their memories, their sense of self, fade away thanks to Alzheimer's and dementia. It is that comparison to carers that highlights the depths of Alisaie's compassion, and her ability to remain strong in the face of such soul-crushing work. She endures heartbreak when Teslina is transformed in front of her, in one of the most harrowing scenes, not just in Final Fantasy XIV, but in any video game. But as Louisoix pressed on, in full awareness of the sacrifice required to save Eorzea, a land not his own, so too does Alisaie press on to protect the people of Amareng, despite the loss she has known. Bethan Walker captures that passion and emotion so well in each of Alisaie's lines. Well done to her.
Get back here!
Is that... It can't be.
Just a lesser sin eater. Nothing to write home about. I knew you'd turn up sooner or later, but I had been hoping for sooner. How are you? That great wall of white is a remnant of the flood. 100 years ago, the balance in the first tipped decisively in favor of light. From that moment, it rose and swelled with each passing day, and then, without warning, it burst forth like water from a broken dam. A colossal wave of pure light, drowning everything in its wake. Only Norvrant was spared. For the most part, living things are composed of ether of various different aspects. But when exposed to such a flood, their etheric harmony is shattered, and their natural form breaks down. Then they either perish, or are warped into mindless abominations. Yes, that's how the Sin Eaters came to be. They were once living creatures, or people, that were caught in the path of the flood. Once the change is wrought, there is no going back. In that instant, they are gripped by an insatiable appetite for ether, and will happily gorge themselves on any living thing within reach. But even that is not the worst of it. The stronger Sin Eaters can plant light in us, like seeds in soil, corrupting our ether and triggering the birth of new monstrosities. They are creatures of base instinct that exist only to feed and to multiply. They feel no pity, know no remorse, and are utterly deaf to reason, which is why they must be destroyed. Every last one of them. The infirmary is full of the Sin Eaters' victims, left here to spend their final hours waiting for the change to overtake them.
But while now the twins have truly become Louisoix's wisdom and heart, they are fully fleshed out, well-rounded and full characters of their own. We have known them for a long time, and many of our memories of Final Fantasy XIV's story are their memories also. These memories are not always obviously stated, though sometimes they are, but they are evident in some of the subtler touches. This is my favourite example. Have a listen to Alphinaud here, as he puts on airs and pretends to be even more posh than he already is.
Oh, who's this then?
Lord and Lady Chai, pray forgive our intrusion. I am given to understand you were in search of an artist.
Ah, you must be the new,
Oh, goodness me! What an adorable boy! That silken hair, those pearly cheeks, oh! And you even smell wonderful, like a bed of flowers. I approve of this one, dearest. I am positive he will paint us the most delightful pictures.
Yes. Well, as long as he paints better than that talentless wretch we sent packing last week.
Wonderful, wonderful! Welcome to Yulmore.
Alphinaud, if it please you, my lady. And this is my assistant.
Your assistant? I've heard of folk bringing in family members, but this seems a bit irregular. Aren't you a little young to have a protege?
We are family in all but name, my lord. Though we share no blood, we have stood by each other through life's many challenges, resolved to prevail together or not at all. Of all people, 'tis she who best understands my work. With her unique insight guiding my hand, the art I create is sure to satisfy your expectations.
Did that remind you of anyone? Perhaps this clip will help.
Ah, the moment has come then.
Pray excuse my lateness. I paid a brief visit to the workshop to inquire about the mana cutters. The engineers assure me that they're ready.
The area is now but a short flight away. Yet what a long and winding path we took to reach this point. Were it not for Master Alphinaud's proposal, we never would have attempted to parley with the dragons. Though our negotiations yielded little, our expedition with Lady Alisaie taught us much.
You took an unimaginable risk. I could scarce believe the tale Estinian told.
Aye. 'Tis true that many of our countrymen would sooner die than join hands with the heretic's mistress. But 'twas through that most unlikely of alliances that we came to speak with Hraesvelgr.
A conversation that went rather poorly, as I recall.
In this instance, the journey was more important than the destination. Had we not slain Nidhogg's consort, Tiaman, and put the Great Worm on his guard, the Dravanians would have arrived at Ishgard's walls long ago.
Aye, that they would. Full grateful am I for every hour of respite your actions have afforded us. Thanks to you, our defenses are much improved. 'Tis but a pity they won't be enough.
Thus you believe an assault upon the area represents the city's best chance of survival. Is that not so, Estinian?
I am under no illusions. Nidhogg's might is legendary. But with his eye in my possession, I can stifle his strength at the source. Victory will be hard won, even so. And I shall be glad indeed to have the Warrior of Light at my side.
You shall have my blade as well. There are more of these mana cutters to be had, yes?
Lord Commander, no!
How can I, a proud knight of Ishgard, stand by and do naught while an outsider risks life and limb for our homeland? I swore an oath to protect this city.
Yes, it does appear that Alphinaud is doing his best Emmerich impression to win over Dulia Chai and Chai News. I love this throwback to a character that is important to my character and to Alphinaud, and is an example of the sort of subtlety that this excellent story is capable of. It's also a feat of voice acting to play a character who is also playing a character. Well done, Colin Ryan.
Myself, you know. And I've had enough of this rabble. Come on!
So what is left for the twins going forward? I am not the first to speculate that part of Endwalker will take us to Charlayan, the twins' home, and home to many of the scions of the Seventh Dawn. There are a few reasons for this, one of them being the introduction of the Sage Dog to the game, and that Alphinaud is its poster boy. Latin is the language of the Garlean Empire, evident in its naming conventions of Primus, Octio, Praetor, and so on. By contrast, Charlayan uses Greek. We know this from Louisoix's Gift of Adelphoi, which we discussed earlier, and we see this again in the name of the sage's weapon, the Nulith. Nulith is formed of two Greek words, the first being nous, or nous, meaning mind, and lithos, meaning stone. If we do indeed go to Charlayan as part of the expansion, it will be interesting to see whether it retains its traditional policy of isolation and neutrality. Perhaps we'll meet the twins' father. We have known what Alphinaud and Alisaie Leveilleur looks like since the release of Encyclopedia Eorzea Volume 1 in 2016. He appears on page 170. This passage mentions that he is the eldest son of Louisoix, so it's not clear how many siblings he may have. There is also no mention of the twins' mother, so her fate is unknown. Alphinaud clearly took after his father in terms of appearance and complexion. The twins are distinctly paler. Perhaps Mrs. Leveilleur is a particularly pale dusk white, and no, I'm not just saying that because I play one. Additionally, I am compelled to make a comparison between Louisoix's battle with Bahamut, concealed within the Lesser Moon Dalamud, and our trajectory in-game, during which we shall be going to the moon. While Louisoix encouraged Alisaie and Alphinaud to seek their own path, these paths both seem to share some lunar themes. Perhaps this is fitting for the story as a whole. There has been a cycle of birth and rebirth for all of Eorzea's existence. Consider that Louisoix's intervention was in the 7th Umbral Calamity. The moon goes through many phases, but ultimately completes all of them again, and again, and again. Can this cycle ever be changed? Can you make the moon stand still? Or will something take the place of the Convocation, or the Ascians, seeing it as a vacuum demanding to be filled? Louisoix was also a lauded sage, though whether this was intended as a lowercase adjective, or the same job which Alphinaud is taking up in Endwalker, is not entirely clear. I am very excited to see where the twins' tale shall go in Endwalker.
Help! Somebody help! Hippogriffs! Hippogriffs on the rampage! A giant flock of them! Please, we need help!
I could do with a little rampage myself.
What? Now wait just a... here we go again.
In a recent interview, Naoki Yoshida had the following to say. Alphinaud and Alisaie have always been considered main characters within the story, says Yoshida. As they are younger, we hope to illustrate their personal growth in a way that players can feel even more strongly than other scions. He points to Alphinaud, who has faced some fairly large setbacks but has managed to overcome them. It's no wonder Yoshida uses Alphinaud as an example. He's the character whose growth is possibly the most compelling argument for how rewarding it is to experience Final Fantasy XIV from start to finish. I feel like Alphinaud and Alisaie are like my younger siblings, although I am a little too old for that to be true, he laughs. Please pay close attention to the story of Alphinaud and Alisaie. They will definitely shine. Alphinaud and Alisaie have always been dear to me, particularly as I am a twin myself. I can relate to both of them in so many ways, as they care for each other, but also compare themselves to each other. I compare myself with my twin sister so often. I look at where she is in life, where I am, and what kind of people we are. She is bolder than me. She is also intensely caring, being a nurse for children. She strikes me very much as the Alisaie of us. Yet like Alisaie, I look at my sister, as Alisaie looked at her brother, and I wonder how she does what she does. I admire her bravery and strength. We have our differences and our similarities, but what is most important to us, and to the Leveilleur twins, is that we love each other. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope it's made you think a bit more closely about the twins. If you enjoyed it, why not consider leaving a like or a comment, or if you are feeling particularly generous, you could subscribe. I really want to thank everyone who has subscribed so far. As of my last check, we have about 740 subscribers, which is quite bananas in my opinion. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts, or any suggestions you have for other videos. If you'd like to watch me playing Final Fantasy XIV and other games for some reason, why not check out my Twitch channel? If you'd like to speak to me more directly, I have set up a Discord server which I have linked below. I have some more videos planned, both Final Fantasy XIV related and not. Please look forward to them, and take care.